Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am still waiting for my guest who is in Nairobi, and he seems to be having a little problem with his internet signal. So come on in and invite somebody to come in. We hopefully he could get this sorted out, but I hope that all of you had a great day. Good evening, everybody, and I hope that you had a wonderful day in the presence of the Lord. I am waiting for my guest. He's in Nairobi, and he seems to be having some technical difficulties. So, right now, for just now, it's just you and me. Good evening, Joba. It's always good to have you with me. But we are in for a very, very exciting show tonight. I'm watching my phone to see whenever he connects with me so that you can hear another amazing story of somebody who has overcome their challenges and still in the process, actually, of overcoming challenges. We know that life throws us curveballs no matter who we are, no matter how successful or unsuccessful we may be. Life happens, and there are some things in our lives that we have no control of, but we know the one who is able to do exceeding and abundantly above all that we can ask or think. So that's who we rely on as a person of faith. I dare not do anything without the guidance of Holy Spirit. I just want to share something personal with you guys. I am one of those who don't believe in the conspiracy theories about the vaccine, and so I literally got my second shot on yesterday. And just like the first shot, I felt perfectly fine. I guess one of those who experienced absolutely no side effects, not in the first dosage, neither in the second dosage. And my approach to medication of any kind is simply this: I have to trust God that when I take a pill, it's going to do exactly what it set out to do, whether that's a Tylenol or a prescription medication, whatever it is. I trust God. And so my approach was the same in getting the vaccine, knowing that I trust Him that He will do what's best for me at all times. So I got it. I'm feeling amazing. Thank God. And I am so grateful. So I'm not one who subscribes to all those conspiracy theories and all that stuff out there. I trust God, the same God that gave them the wisdom, the knowledge, and the understanding to actually create the vaccine. It's the same God that I trust all day, every day, no matter what. So I did it. I'm perfectly fine. I'm here in front of you. And that's just my little story. If you're just joining me, good night and welcome. My guest, Arsenio Butler, is in Nairobi, and he's having a little difficulty. So I'm just chatting as I'm waiting for him to come in with the internet signal. I've been chatting with him all week to get a grasp of this amazing journey. He is a young man that I've known since he was a teenager. We actually attended the same church in Freeport, Grand Bahama back in the 90s, I believe that was. And I had lost track of him for many, many years. And I'll tell you how I came across this particular guest tonight. I was doing some work and his name just popped into my spirit, and I reached out to him, looked for him on Facebook, and all I said was, "Are you ready to share your story?" I hadn't seen him for years. And he simply said, "Yes, I am." And so I was just so very, very delighted that I listened, first of all, to Holy Spirit to actually reach out and connect with him. So we're still waiting for him to come in. Good evening, Cecily. Cecily. I don't know why I'm getting your name wrong tonight. Good to have you. Good evening, my brother Newton. Always good to have you. So we're just chatting for the moment as he makes his way. By the way, it's like 3 a.m. And so for him to actually have consented to do the show in the first place, I offered to change the time for the show to accommodate him. And he told me no issue, he would get on. So I'm looking down to see whenever he connects. But I wanted to, let's take this time to really just talk a little bit about what's happening, what's going on in your lives right now. And as all of you know, I'm a coach. So I work with people who are feeling stuck and trying to get their lives back on track and basically trying to live their life on purpose. So I work with a lot of people who are in that position where they're trying to figure it out every step of the way. And I can relate to that because obviously I was there. And that's why I created the program. I was in a position at one point where I felt dissatisfied. And no matter how it appeared to others that I was successful, and I did experience some degree of success, no matter what I was doing, it still wasn't enough because I knew there should be more. I knew I could be doing more. And I knew that there was so many giftings and talents that were still lying dormant inside of me. And so when I created that program, it was with that in mind that as I helped myself get out of a slump, I would be able to help others to do the same thing. And so, if I'm speaking to anybody out there tonight as we wait for Arsenio to come in, if you're in a slump, if you're feeling emotionally tired, if you're feeling physically tired, if you're feeling spiritually tired, I want to say to you tonight that you don't have to do it alone. You don't have to live in a silo. You don't have to be in isolation. We choose to do those things, and that is our choice. But the reality is that you don't have to do it alone. There are all kinds of people out there in different industries, different job descriptions who are trained and designed to do just that, to help you out of any slump that you may be in any area of your life. If you're sick, most people would go to a doctor unless they're afraid of going to doctors, which some people are. And some people would say they're afraid of needles as well. When people get mentally ill, that's a different issue altogether. Most people don't go to seek professional help, and that's because the stigma that's attached to it and how they were indoctrinated over the years. A lot of people suffer in silence, and their behavior changes. And sometimes people around them see that this behavior is changing, but they, rather than talk to them and advise them and counsel with them too, after you've already prayed with them, because we know prayers are our first line of defense. Let me put it like that. So we pray. When something happens to somebody, we pray. And then we continue, if we continue to see a pattern in that person's life and we continue to see that something is they're not making any improvement. There are Christian counselors, there are Christian psychologists, there are Christian psychiatrists, if you want to look at it in that realm. But there are people who are trained and anointed to help you through whatever situation you may be in. And so, back to my original point, you don't have to do it alone. And I don't know if you've journeyed with me throughout the past. I started the show back in October. Every single guest that I've had has had an issue where they needed help. Some people, by the grace of God, were able to overcome their situations almost instantly. But that was the minority, I can tell you that. Some people got a miracle, and that was what was able to get them over the hump that they were in. Other people, they had to get professional help. There's no shame in seeking help. You don't have all the answers. Nobody has all the answers, as a matter of fact. But you have an opportunity to actually surround yourself with the kinds of people that will help to not only give you the support that you need, but give you the counsel and advice that you need. And that's very, very important. Good evening, Monique Pratt. Good evening, Christine. Good evening, Katura. Good evening, Esther. We're still waiting for our guest, Arsenio Butler, who is in Nairobi, and he's having internet challenges. Go figure that. I've been chatting with him literally all week. He's in an 8-hour different time zone. And for some reason, he can't get on. I'm looking at my phone right now for him to pop up, and he's still not getting on. But I'm talking about getting help in the areas that you know you're struggling in. Shakespeare said something in his writings, and he said, above all else, to thine own self be true. To your own self be true. Don't buy into the lies that people may say about you, think about you. feel about you. Don't buy into that. Be honest with yourself when it comes to the areas that you're struggling with your life. And I would encourage you to not only surround yourself with the people who are able to help you in those areas. And if you don't, for some reason, have those kinds of people in your life, then perhaps you need to take another look at the people that you are hanging around. Because what good is having company that can't really assist you in your time of need? What good is having a circle of friends who can't be there to, one, appreciate your authentic self, two, let you know when you're going off track, pull you by the reins and say, wait, hold on a minute, you got to get it together because something is not right. If you're in the company of persons who feel like they can't tell you that because you're going to retaliate either negatively or you won't speak to them again or something like that, if you're in the company of people who may say something to you like that, then you really need to take a good look at yourself. Because if you have people around you who feel like they can't be honest with you, that's not a good thing. That's not a recipe for growth. That's not a good recipe for you to develop. And so make sure that the circle that you hang out in is a strong circle. It's a strong support system that gives you all the nutrients that you need. And if you can't find it in that circle, then you need to step out and find it elsewhere. Good evening, Irma. Good to have you. We're still waiting. I don't know what's going on technically with Arsenio, but I'm still waiting for him to show up. He's having some issues, and I don't know. I don't know because we've been talking all week. But I wanted to talk about just getting the kind of help that you need. So if this turns out where it's just you and me, then we need to talk. So somebody tell me something about what you experienced today in service. Did you go to church? Um, did you get oh, by the way, did you get a revelation of something? By the way, I watched two services online today, well, parts of two, and both of the services, the speakers were talking about restoration. Both of them were talking about restoration. And so I do believe that we are in a time and season where God is restoring. One of the key factors that one of the speakers mentioned is not restoration to the original state, but restoration to a better state, the way God does restoration, as a matter of fact. Because, if we get something old, if we restore an old car, if we restore a piece of jewelry or something that may have been broken, we try to get it back to its original state. But the restoration that God does, he takes us over and beyond. If you just think for a moment about the story of Job, after losing everything, after losing his 10 children, and he got double basically everything that he had lost. So it wasn't just getting back what he lost, but over and above that, exceeding and abundantly type of anointing that we believe that's coming in this season for all of you who've been working, who've been toiling, who've been struggling. So somebody out there, what was the word for you today? Because I'm trying to keep this going and hoping that Arsenio clocks in at any minute now. But since we're here, we might as well talk about it. So somebody tell me, what is it what was the word for you today? Did you go to service? Did you watch an online service? What was happening with you today? Anybody? So yeah, I just thought the word restoration coming up twice was really, really powerful, really, really powerful and meaningful for me, as a matter of fact, because I live a life of expectancy. I'm ashamed to say that. I'm always expecting greater. I'm always expecting that if I plant seeds, I get a harvest. I'm always expecting that if I put in the work, I'll see the results. And so me hearing a word of restoration really got me excited. And I'm really, really happy about that. Katura, okay, you're in a season of restoration also. Awesome. Deeper, going deeper. Okay. Totally believe totally in God. Yeah. So I think all of those things are connected because as you are restored, you recognize that to whom much is given, much is required. And in order for you to be able to manage and maintain what you have to go deeper if you want to maintain what you've already obtained. Because in some cases, we've lost things, but it wasn't because the enemy took it away from us. It's because we were reckless, we were wasteful. And so we lost it. And if that's the way it happened, we have to own that, which means we have to take another look at the way we were doing things in the first place. And why did we lose what we had if it wasn't an all out attack or assault of the enemy against us? And so if you lost something because you weren't a good steward, because you were just reckless and whatever, then you need to recondition your mind so that when restoration comes, you'll be able to manage what you get. And so that calls definitely for going deeper, deeper in yourself and deeper in your relationship with God so that He can expose those parts of you that need healing, that need help, that need to become whole. That's important. And we really need to check ourselves. Yeah, definitely being intentional about everything. Hi, Denver. Good to have you. Definitely being intentional about everything that we do in our lives. Anybody else? I'm waiting for Arsenio, but we're talking today about what is the word? What did you receive today? Did you go to a service? Did you watch something online today? For me, that word was restoration. I am so looking forward to restoration in every area of my life. I'm talking about spirit, soul, and body, because what good is having a fat spirit and a lean soul? What good if they're not fitly joined together and compacted, working together so that you're strengthened, so that you're not struggling emotionally, so that you're not struggling mentally, so that you're not struggling intellectually. We are ordained, designed, preordained with this tripartite body being rather to be all that we can possibly be. And so I'm definitely looking forward to being restored. So anybody else out there, what is the word that really captured you today? If you went to a service or if you watched one in on online today. Still waiting for Arsenio to come in. I really don't understand what's going on, and I'm still not seeing anything from him. But of course, we know because we do what we do, we know that God does all things well. And we are in a season also. The word for you today was symbol. This Irma says it was symbol. Just knowing how God sometimes shows us symbols or likeness of things He has done in the past. Okay, symbols. So don't miss the symbols. Don't miss the things that He's showing you. And we miss symbols sometimes because of their cycles in our lives. I've noticed over my lifetime that God works with me in cycles of 10. Every time I get into the 10th year of something, it shifts and I go in another direction or He adds something. And so that's a pattern that I've recognized in my life, that He works with me in cycles of 10. Every time I enter the 10th year of something, I switch to something else. And so that's important that you don't miss the symbols. Be able to see the things that God is doing in your life so that you can progress. Danvers says, having an excellent spirit. Listen, having an excellent spirit. Do we need an excellent spirit? Take a look at Daniel. You know, the scripture says that he didn't, oftentimes people say, they operate in the spirit of excellence, or they like things to be done in the spirit of excellence. But the Spirit said that Daniel had an excellent spirit. So what that means is it wasn't how I like things to be done or whatever. Because he had an excellent spirit, that's the only thing what could come out of him is excellence. And so that's different. when you have an excellent spirit, when you are committed to doing the things. He spent 3 times a day praying. We know that. He spent time fasting. We know that. And so he had this excellent spirit, which caused him to be promoted. He was promoted because of the excellent spirit that was on him. And everybody, I'm sure you're familiar with the story of Daniel, even from Sunday school. So Myrna Victoria said, don't let your guard down after your breakthrough. Okay, yeah, that's real good. And I can tie that into restoration. Like I'm saying, if you are being restored and you're going to come out on the other side with more that you had when you went in, you really can't let your guard down. You have to be more diligent. You have to be more intentional, as somebody mentioned earlier. You have to be more purposeful and strategic, not only with what you do, but with your alliances, with the people that you come in contact with. I'm telling you, it matters. Your company matters. It matters. You should never be the smartest one in your bunch. You should always be among people who are doing more so that they can push you, so that they can encourage you. You should always be among people that challenge you. And I'm telling you, if you don't have those kinds of people in your life, you need to find them. You need to connect with them because that's important. So don't let your guard down after breakthroughs because you'll lose it all again. You'll lose everything that you just gained. Yeah. So maintenance is important. Monique says we need to show more love towards other people. Oh my gosh. Yeah. That's major. We know that's the root of everything, love. And some of us have an issue showing love, especially when it comes to things that happen to people that we know in the church arena, especially when it comes to people in that household of faith. And rather than us undergirding them and encircling them and wrapping our arms around them, we would be the first to sit in judgment and to talk about them and to point the finger at them and to isolate ourselves away from them. And I think that's the thing that hurts most. Fortunately, I've never experienced anything like that personally, but I know people who have, where something went on in their lives that was out of character, they fell into sin or something happened, and rather than people gravitate to them to hold them up, to be like that Aaron and that Hur for Moses, rather than people hold their hands up, they pull them down and cause them to sink deeper and deeper into the muck and mire that brought them into the spot that they're in right now. Sometimes the church is not kind, Monique, and we definitely need to show more love and to be more supportive. Be more supportive one to another. Okay, Irma said he works with her in cycles of 7. Every 7 years, something significant happens. Awesome. Katura is saying connections are so important. Stacy Bo said, for me today was expecting something great, celebrating not just for me, but others as well who don't know how to celebrate. We have a problem. First of all, a lot of people have a problem celebrating themselves. And that's because they're not used to being in environments where they are celebrated. And so whenever it does happen, it feels odd. It doesn't feel right, especially if they were conditioned to feel like they weren't worthy of being celebrated. And so some people are uncomfortable. I don't know if you know any people out there. If you know anybody who's uncomfortable whenever you pay them a compliment at any point, just put it in the chat. Let me know. Because I know people, I was just talking to someone yesterday and complimenting her and just telling her you're just so amazing at what you do, etc., etc. And she couldn't see it. She couldn't accept it. And so she literally started debating with me debating with me. And while I'm seeing how she is so amazing at what she's doing, she's telling me all the things that she's not doing. And that really wasn't the issue at the time. I wanted to celebrate what she was doing, and she couldn't even accept that. And so, Stacy, there are a lot of people who expect great things, or they say they're expecting great things, but the reality is when the great things happen, one, they were not prepared for it, one, they don't know how to not even react, respond to it, and two, three, they are uncomfortable. And so as much as we sit down, some people sit and talk about what they're expecting God to do, and this, they're not even comfortable even receiving, and not, and ill prepared for what it is. And I think that sometimes, I know I struggled in the past with being my harshest critic. Listen, there's absolutely nothing that anybody can tell me that I would believe if I think it wasn't good. And you can talk about, so I struggled. Notice I said I struggled with that, but that's over because I learned how not to put so much pressure on myself. I learned how that the me that I am, with the openness to grow and develop, to flourish where I'm planted, that's good enough. Hey, here I am, my authentic self, take it or leave it. I learned how to accept that, so I don't struggle. I no, I'm not the critique. I did. Let me give you an example. Yeah, just say thank you when you get a compliment. You're absolutely right, Loretta. I did my first corporate certification. I was certified back in, I think that was 2000, as a corporate trainer, and we had to go before a board. I can't even remember how many people, men and women, on this board that I had to go before. And we had to actually put together a training, and they were the participants in the training. I was the facilitator, and that's how they certified you, to make sure that your training had all the elements as laid out in that particular the trainer that I was in. I did the training. That was at the time too when my dad had passed away, just maybe a month or two before. So I was loaded, and I had to go to West Palm Beach where he lived. And that was the first time that I had gone back since his funeral. So here I am before this board with all this mixed emotions, but I have to get through the certification. And I was convinced that I did the worst job I could have possibly done because my emotions were on turbo. Well, that's what I was saying to myself, and that's what I was feeling. And what they did in the certification that I did was not only that they evaluate me, but they asked us to evaluate ourselves. Do you know that in areas where I was giving myself like 3s and 5s, these people were giving me like 8s and 9s and 10s? That's how hard I was on myself. I couldn't believe it. And when I told them afterwards what I was dealing with at the time, why? Because you know when you do something and things pop in your head after the fact, I should have said this, I should have done that. That's what I was experiencing. And rather than me again focus on what I did right, I was focusing on all the things that I didn't do right. Well, these people didn't know that I didn't do those things right because they didn't know what was in my head. They didn't know what was in my notes. So there I am, beating up myself. So I ended up giving myself like an average, I think it was maybe under 50%. Like I didn't even give myself 50%, y'all. And I ended up walking out of the certification with probably like a 90 something percent. That was a quick lesson for me that my vision of myself was skewed, really, really skewed. And I needed to get it together. And I remember one of the evaluators at the time, the persons who certified me, she was like, Miranda, you need to take another look at yourself. So, for those of you who struggle with being so hard on yourself, take another look and not struggle with the things that not keep being down on yourself because what you didn't get right, but celebrate back to what Stacy was talking about, celebrate what you did get right. And then that doesn't mean you don't have to fix those things that you know are still out of whack, but don't let it weigh you down so much where in my eyesight I was a 4 and these people thinking I'm a 9. Like, that's crazy. I didn't even give myself the benefit of the doubt. Okay, so let me read some more comments. Oh, hey, Sani, my sister's on. Hey, Sani, good to have you. Katura, I am my hardest critic, so I've learned to accept a comment versus a genuine compliment. Yeah, okay. And you know the difference. You know the difference again, and that stems from the people that you really value in your life, and you know that when they speak to you, if it is a critique, these are people who are trying to add value to your life rather than tear you down. So if you don't know the difference, you need to be able to distinguish those kinds of people in your life, the kinds of people who would offer constructive, as they say, criticism or just critique what you're doing so that you can improve it, rather people who are just trying to get at you and just to find some fault. Those people that I call nitpickers, like no matter what you do, they're going to always come up with something to the contrary of what's happening. Still no sign of Arsenio, guys. I don't understand what happened. Okay, so Irma says, I'm just learning how to accept compliments, but I have great expectations from God and I have received great and abundant blessings, but just now learning to accept acknowledgement from others. It is a struggle if you've been conditioned all of your life. And like I said, whether it was from your internal environment, and when I say internal, I mean in you, your own space, or whether it's from the external environment and the people around you, whether it's them from childhood or whatever, the friends that you had, who just never complimented you. And that didn't mean they meant you any ill will or anything. Perhaps they themselves had never been complimented or understood the value in being able to not only compliment, but to accept compliments. In perspective, I'm not even talking about the narcissists, those kinds of people, it's all about them all day, every day. I don't mean them because they obviously have some issues that they have to work through themselves. Hey, good evening, Addie Liz. Good to have you too. So yeah, I'm looking now to see who else is out there. All right, so yeah, we're talking about being able to accept compliments now because that's a big deal. That is a big deal. And on the same token, being able to give them. I think culturally we struggle with telling people good job. Culturally, even if you know in your heart, it's the most amazing thing. Even if you know and you see this person is doing an amazing job, some people struggle to tell someone good job. I don't know what they think is going to happen to them if they compliment somebody else. I don't know if it's because of their own personal insecurities. But if you see somebody around you doing a good job, say something, y'all. Say something. Let your voice be heard. You will never know that very day that person may have needed, not wanted, that person may have needed to hear that on that very day, just to encourage them and to push them a little further. And so don't be afraid. Don't hold back. Open up. I know it ain't. It's not a cultural norm. Let's put it like that. It's not a cultural norm for Bahamians, and I'm speaking of Bahamians, to be celebratory of somebody else's achievements, especially if it's somebody directly in their circle. There are some people who have circles of friends that they're cool, with you once all of y'all on the same page and doing the same things and having the same conversations about the same struggles and the same trials, and they good with you. They good with you, so y'all could sit down all and have that pity party together, and walk away everybody knowing that yeah, she messed up just like me. But get yourself together, turn a new leaf, see how much compliments you get. See how many compliments you get from the same people. And that's not everybody, but there's just a group of people who believe that you shouldn't be doing better than them because they will feel left behind or left out. And here's the thing, rather than them ask, hey, Miranda, hey, Sally, hey, John, how did you do what you did to get over whatever it is that you experience? Rather than them ask you that, you know what they're going to flip it and say? You think you're better than them now. If that sounds familiar to anybody, please tell me yes. Please say yes in the chat. Rather than them compliment you and ask you if you could help them, they'll say, oh, she acting brand new. She thinks she's better than this one now, or something like that. And they come up with all of these things, what they say, gaslighting. They come up with things that try to make you think, make you feel bad for accomplishing something. They try to make you feel guilty for achieving something. They try to make you feel guilty for advancing. They try to make you feel guilty. Listen, I don't buy into it at all. Don't make me no difference. No. Because once you understand, once you find you and you understand your why, that's the only focus that you have. Absolutely the only focus that you have is doing all that you've been created and ordained to do. That's the only focus that you have. And so the people, the naysayers who don't want you to move out of their circle because they want you to continue in that same pity party with them, you got to do what Peter did. He got out the boat, and at least he made an attempt to escape them and all their fears. He made an attempt. And even though he was close enough that Jesus was still able to rescue him, but he made an attempt to do something rather than just being in the boat scared. So don't watch your company, man. I can't really emphasize that enough. Watch your company. So Irma says, I practice giving compliments intentionally, and not only to people I know, but if I enjoy, if what I enjoyed was but if I don't think I'm reading this right. But if I enjoyed was inspired or motivated. Okay, yeah. If what I enjoyed was inspired or motivated, I am going to say something. Yeah. That's actually a great practice, because again, you don't know what your words may mean. And it could be a completely total stranger. But you don't know what those two words, good job, or I really enjoyed whatever, you don't know what that means to a person and how that's going to continuously push them to a place where they want to do more, and they want to be more inspiring, and they want to reach more people, and then they want to elevate their game and they want to step it up. I have this personal philosophy that I should always leave people better than I met them, no matter where I go. I should always leave people better than I met them. And if I'm in circles, if I'm in the company of people, I always ask God, why am I here? Because sometimes you're in places and spaces and you're trying to figure out, why am I here? This does not have anything to do with me. And then just let it be a bunch of confusion and it ain't making no sense, right? I've been in situations like, why am I really here? And truth be told, Sometimes I walk away still trying to figure out why was I there. But if I'm clear on my assignment in that moment, oh, I'm not leaving you in that ball of confusion. If I have something to say, I am going to say, because I try to make my words count. I know my spiritual mom, Beulah May Fowler, she would always say, taste your words, taste it before you say it. And so I try my best to use words wisely, to use them carefully, and to be intentional again about the words that I am saying to people. And remember that for all of you, wherever you show up, there is a reason. You're not just a part of the crowd, even if it's a situation where you're a guest at something. That person that is literally sitting to your left or right, in front of you or behind you, who knows if you were not in that particular space for them? Who knows? Whether it was you just smiled and said good night or good afternoon or good morning and nobody else said it to them, that may be a change in their life for that day. And so don't take for granted any of the spaces that you ever find yourself in. I always say, if I show up in a room, I'm here for a purpose. I'm taking a seat at the table because I belong there. It ain't no accident, because God orders the steps of his children. So it's not an accident that you show up in any space. You belong there. So Elder Inslee says they don't know what you had to take to get to where you are. That's true. And some people don't really care, you know. They don't really care. It doesn't matter to them what you have to go through. They never even give it a second thought, because their brains are not conditioned to even be sensitized or empathetic to anyone. And that's just the truth. And if they are that way, I got to tell you, that's something they have to deal with, but don't make that your issue. That's something they have to work on. If they can't see the value of who you are or what you bring to the space that you're in, that's their issue. What you do, what Jesus said to the disciples, remember, he sent them out two by two, and then he said to them, listen, when you go to wherever you're going, after you have said whatever you were there to do, shake the dust off your feet and keep it moving. That's what we have to adopt. You show up in spaces and people don't see the value of you or whatever. You can't whine and say, I don't know why they don't listen to me. Or no, shake the dust off your feet. Keep it moving. You have to guard your heart with all diligence, as Solomon said, because out of it flows the issues of life. So you can't get bogged down in the muck and mire of somebody that does not see your value. Okay? Karen, oh, hey, Karen, good to see you. She said, agreed, Miranda, we must not let other people's opinions of us stop us from being who God made us to be or to reach our full potential. Absolutely right. Good night, Della Reese. Rosina Turner, lack of modeling or praising others and preference of defining people by their past is such a formula for not recognizing the value of the achievement of others. Some people just lack the capacity. And it's not that they can't build capacity, because we all could build capacity. But some people lack the capacity to give compliments because it hadn't been given to them. And they're uncomfortable with receiving it even when it's given. And that's work that they have to do. They have to work on themselves to be able to change that, or go to a professional to help them with that. Because if you have limiting beliefs about yourself, you have to change. You have to reset your entire mind, because nobody's going to convince you otherwise if you don't even open yourself to the possibility that maybe I'm wrong. Nobody's going to be able to convince you. So you have to be open for change. You have to be open, more importantly, for transformation in order for that to take to take place. And so they don't recognize the value and achievement of others because they have a problem even recognizing their own value and their own achievements. So you have to remember that. You have to remember that. Joba says, no matter what is said, I push forward. Don't put me down when I'm trying to get up. Amen. So Stacey says, keep it moving. Karen says, shaking the dust off my feet and we'll keep moving. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, this is a divine setup. Okay, totally enjoying it. Hey, LaQuisha. Good to have you. Hey, LaQuisha. So listen, guys. We're talking about I was talking earlier actually about limiting beliefs and I guess this is what oh, totally agree, Miranda. Hey, Myrna, you made us feel so welcome tonight as usual, but sharing our word shows how much you recognize others. Thank you. Blessings. Hey, we in this together, you know. I'm committed, like I said, to leave people better that I meet them no matter where I go. So what I'm saying may resonate with some and not others, and that's okay too. I'm not going to feel any way discouraged or anything. I believe that everything is ordained. I had Arsenio plan for the night, and I don't know what happened. Um, but ultimately, our lives are in the hands of God, and so we just press forward. So yeah, talking about limiting beliefs and what you believe about yourself. That's important. What you believe about yourself. And so people would say crazy things. As a matter of fact, I was watching one of these influencers today who's from LA earlier today, and switching subjects again. She was talking about colorism and colorism in the Black community. And for those of you who are not familiar with colorism, colorism is simply the light skinned people against the dark skinned people, et cetera, et cetera. And all of you have been, I'm sure, in circles where some people will say one thing about the other, like, oh, light skinned people believe this, or carry your black self, and all this kind of stuff. So she was saying, and she's like, I guess my complexion, so she's a chocolate girl. And she was talking about some incident that happened. And I think it was some celebrity having something anyway in this club. And the celebrity didn't want any dark skinned people in the club. And the celebrity was a black person, but they happened to be a light skinned black person. But they didn't want any dark skinned people in the club with them. And so people really felt bad and rejected. So the colorism that exists in the black community is so real. It's so real. And so I remember I wrote an article on LinkedIn a couple of months ago in the height of the whole George Floyd, what I want to call it, catastrophe. And they were talking about the systemic racism in the police department and all that stuff. And I was like, wait a minute, we haven't even dealt with colorism in the black community and why people believe that because they have a certain hue, pigmentation, that they are better than each other. And some people act that way and some people show you that way. I was fortunate that, like, I always been chocolate and will forever be. So I always accepted myself, and I came from a family who, hey, that's who we are. We do what we do and we keep it moving. And so I didn't feel the insecurities that can sometimes come from people who have been victimized by other persons of the same race. Now, I'm not talking about racism. Remember, we're talking about colorism. Some people have been made to feel bad about themselves because of the color of their skin. Yeah. Because of the color of them skin of their skin. And we've seen people who and let's just put it all on the table. I don't even know why I'm at this particular point. But so we all of us know somebody who we knew was like a one hue, and then the next day they another hue. Right? All of us know somebody like that. I personally don't have an issue with somebody who wants to enhance as they call it, their skin tone. I don't have an issue with that, but what I have an issue with is if you're doing it because you believe you're not attractive enough because you are dark skin, or because you're not good enough. That's where I have the issue, because that plays into this whole stereotype about white is right and all that kinds of stuff. I went to a I didn't experience it in the Bahamas, but when I went to university and I went to a HBCU, historically black college university, I went to HBCU, and it was prevalent. I mean, I think that was probably the first time for me that I saw colorism at its greatest form when I went to HBCU, because again, I used to tell people I was raised in a nation where my leaders looked like me. By the time I came along, the people before would have had to experience the colonialism and all that stuff, the British rule, all that. But when I came along, Sir Lyndon was the prime minister. So I saw leaders that looked like me. And for immediately, oh, good night, Lillian, good to have you. When I saw people that looked like me, and then I went to HBCU where students were still talking about slavery. And of course, that's where I was really educated about slavery and all that stuff, because I had to take African American history. But, and they were still bogged down with the white man did this, the white man did that. I couldn't relate. And they thought that was strange. I couldn't relate to it in depth because I told them my country, the people looked like me. And so I didn't have anything against the quote unquote white man. I just didn't. So I couldn't get on that train. I couldn't jump on that bandwagon with them. And I heard a lot of those things. But I know in the Bahamas, I do know that there is colorism in certain circles. Absolutely. There are people in certain spaces who segregate the lights from the light skin, from the dark skin, from the browns, and whatever that case is. There are people who live in like that. And hey, unfortunately, if you isolate yourself on either side of the spectrum, if you have a problem with people because they light skin or white, and on the same token, if you dark skin and you have a problem with people because they're light skin or white, and if you're white or light skin and have a people because they're dark skin, then on either side of the spectrum, you have some issues that you need to work out. Because what you're doing ultimately is depriving yourself of some rich experiences on either side. Being able to mix and mingle culturally, being able to mix and mingle intellectually, being able to share spaces with people that are different. And some of us are afraid of different. Some of us are afraid of different. We don't want to be around people if they're not like us, if they don't act like us. Uh, um, we don't have a problem, and there's so much to learn in differences and being exposed. So anybody out there, have you, growing up in the Bahamas or wherever you're watching from, have you had an issue or experienced an issue with colorism? Let me know. Anybody? Have you had an issue with colorism? Have you ever been made to feel uncomfortable because of the color of your skin, whether you were light skinned? We're talking about, remember, I'm not talking about races, Caucasian or black. I'm talking about colorism within the black community. So have you ever been made to feel uncomfortable because you were too light or too dark? Let me know if anybody has ever had any experience like that, where you've been made to feel uncomfortable because of your skin. among your own race or your family. Oh, and speaking of family, I had a client last year. She was in one of my coaching groups, and she is actually, I believe, lighter. Yeah, she's lighter than I am, like lighter. So I guess I would consider her brown skin or whatever, just lighter or whatever brown skin means. But in any event, she's lighter than me, but darker than everybody else in her family. She was the darkest person because her family could literally pass, as they say. And within the family structure, they reminded her that she was the darkest one. So imagine being in a family where you're getting that from. All of y'all, the same blood running through your vein, but you just look different. That's all. So imagine that happening. So it seems like nobody has ever had any issues with anybody making them feel uncomfortable because of the color of their skin. That's awesome. That is absolutely awesome. That you guys have not been able to experience that. I'll tell you something else that I experienced when I was in university. And I went to school in a traditionally white town. Like, yeah. But this one wasn't colorism. This was just all out blatant racism. So walking down the street, and a white lady is walking towards me and literally looking at me, clutching her bag, like all 5'4" of me. Those of you who know me, um, she's clutching her bag, looking at me. She crosses the street hurriedly, like I was going to attack her or something. That was literally my first experience. I think I was about 18 or 19 then, because I was in I went to college when I was 17. So that might have been my freshman year. I might have been 17, fresh out of high school. And she's hurrying away from me as if I'm going to attack her because I'm black and clutching a bag and looking at me. I didn't even know how to feel about that at the time. Um, I know I didn't feel offended. I think I probably just chuckled and kept walking because she just looked so silly to me doing that. So, okay, Karen says, when I won the title of Miss Catholic High, the mother of the first runner up asked one of the judges, how could they let that black girl win? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yep. That was very prevalent. Very, very prevalent, Karen, back in the day. I do know that. So Inslee says, when you die, and if he was white, he would turn black. Oh, I don't even know. I don't even know how that works. I really don't like to be around cops that much. Actually, not at all. Okay, so Irma says, I had an experience in the workplace, but I didn't feel any way because my thing was, I am who I am, hue and all. Yeah, absolutely. That's when you have a healthy perspective of who you are, but there are some people that don't. And for those people, they really hurt. And it really matters when people pick on them just because of colorism. Colorism. Thinking that you're bad. I remember a story. Now that I think about it, I remember one story I was in primary school. I went to a private school, and one of the girls and I got into a fight. I don't even remember why. We were probably like 7, 8 years old. And I do recall her saying to me, carry your black self. I remember that. And I always had a smart mouth. And I remember saying, I may be black, but I'm not dumb like you, right? That wasn't the nicest thing to say. I was 7 or 8, and she was one of the brightest students, and I was one of the top students. So I remember retaliating at her with, at least I'm not dumb, right? So that was my defense at that time because she was light skinned, but didn't make a difference to me because, yeah, she wasn't making the grades at the time. And so that was, I think that probably was my earliest experience with somebody retaliating against me because of the color of my skin. But hey, life, life, and it makes a difference to a whole lot of people. And so I'm saying all that to say we just really need to be more sensitive. We really need to be more sensitive to the people around us and more aware of what we say to people, even if it isn't a matter of colorism or whatever, because at the end of the day, everybody has a reason for doing what they do. Even if the reason may be skewed, it may be unhealthy, they have a reason for doing what they do. And at that particular time, we may not understand it. It may not make sense to us, but that still is no reason for us to sit in a seat of judgment and to point a finger at us. Rather, we should, if we care about this person, try to have a conversation with them so that we can understand why did you do what you did. It may turn out that it was the best thing for them to do at that time, and that may have been their only recourse at that particular time. But I think we need to spend more time actually talking to each other and trying to understand each other so that we can get along better and have a better quality of life. So Joba says, I have mixed blessing in my family. I was told that I contaminated my race by not having children with a black man. This is so sad. Yeah. That is so sad. But again, that's a lack of understanding and exposure from whomever would have said something like that, because all of us are mixed with something somewhere. Everybody. No matter how light you are or how dark you are, everybody is mixed with some other genetic something race from somewhere. Everybody. Every single person. And so that's important to understand. But yeah, it's sad when your own family doesn't understand and accept the choices that you make, because it's a choice you make, to be with whoever you want to be with. A friend of mine said to me a long time ago, love the one who loves you, period. Whoever loves you, love them back. So yeah, a black person told you that. Yeah, this sounds like something somebody who's uninformed would say. Absolutely, Jobo. So Kaylee, you said talk about hurtful. However, I'm so used to it in my skin is so much thicker. Yes. Okay. Yeah. You have to be. Yeah, the Long Island clan. All right. Yeah. We're not going to even go there with that. Okay. Hey, Kayla, good night. Karen says, yes, talking to each other and not about one another in a negative way. Yeah. Communication, we always say communications is key. Communications is key. Communications is key. Communications is key. But how many of us are actually communicating? It's a process, y'all. Communication is, I when I was in university, there was this model that we had to learn about communication, and it was a process where there is a sender and there's a receiver. So on the left and the right, a sender and a receiver. In the middle is the decoder, and that's where the problem usually stems from. It's how that message is decoded in the center before it gets to the receiver that determines whether or not that piece of communication was effective. How many times have you said something to someone, or even nowadays where we text so much, how many times have you texted something and the person, the receiver on the other end, misinterpreted what you said? Anybody ever had that experience when they sent a text and the person misinterpreted the text and it wasn't they didn't receive it in the way you sent it. That happens a lot in texting. Good evening, Katrina Belaine. Good to have you here. That happens a lot in texting and written messages. Yeah, it happens a lot. So imagine if you're speaking to someone and they're misinterpreting you, how much more texting? And so you have to be careful when you're sending a text. And I can tell you, particularly if it's something that's very, very important, you need to pick up that phone and say whatever you need to say. You need to pick up the phone and say whatever you need to say. I think the risk is greater when you text it. That's what I want to say. And then not only that, because they can take that text and forward that and so on and so on and so on and so on. You don't know where that message would go. And with their interpretation of what you said, when in reality you didn't mean it the way they received it. And so effective communication, really being able to, as the scripture says, come, let us reason together. We don't spend a lot of time reasoning. We don't spend a lot of time reasoning. We talk to each other. We talk at each other. We talk about each other. But we don't spend a lot of time reasoning together and coming to conclusions that are mutually beneficial and respectful for both parties involved. We don't spend a lot of time doing that. We just walk away. Some people can't even agree to disagree, as we say. Some people can't know. It either has to be right, they're right, and you're wrong. And that's the only thing they would accept. But clearly, that's not a pattern for good communication. Clearly, it's not. And so it's not just communication is key, but effective communication, where when we both walk out of the room or hang up the phone or continue, or with the text, we both are on the same page. We both have the same understanding of the issue so that there is no sidebars otherwise skewing or distorting whatever it was that we had discussed. I think a lot of times we struggle with that. And it has a lot to do, I believe, and you could chime in if you agree with how you were raised. Some people weren't raised in households where they were even allowed to have an opinion. Some people weren't raised in households where they were allowed to have an opinion or to talk or the voice. You simply just do, rather did, you simply just did what you were told to do without explanation. That probably was the average household. That's why so many struggle with being able to express themselves. That's why so many people say, I'm quiet, I'm shy. Because what happened is they have repressed feelings, repressed emotions, and they were not allowed the opportunity to express them. And even as adults, they haven't learned how to connect in communities where they have the liberty to say whatever it is that they want to say, in other words, their opinion or speaking their mind without feeling judged. There are not many safe spaces around. And that brings me to this point. As women in particular, men also, we need to create safe spaces for the people around us. And what do I mean by that? We have to be able to position ourselves as people that you could literally tell anything and leave it right here. You have to create safe spaces for people to be able to share. And that's difficult to do in some respects. And it's easy for the person who has the natural ability to do that. But a lot of people have to work on that. I'm able to do this show week after week. You know why? Not only because God has ordained this is an assignment for this season, but because people trust me. Because they trust me. And many times, the things what I have heard and they have shared before we come live on Sunday, all the stuff that I've heard from them during the week, we never discuss when we come live. Most of the things, as a matter of fact. And I can tell you there's not been one single person that has not said to me at some point during an interview, I've never shared this with anyone before. You have to be that conduit for people in your circle to be able to come to and feel safe that if I say this, I'm not going to be judged. Thank you, Pressy. If I say this, I'm not going to be, the finger is not going to be pointed at me. If I say this, I'm not going to be ridiculed. We have to be able to make people feel safe. And the church doesn't do a good job. And when I say the church, the organized church as it exists in this moment doesn't do a good job of making people feel safe. Doesn't do a good job of making people feel safe. I worked in full-time ministry. I mean, in the church, day to day to day to day to day, at a period in my life. I have heard so many graphic, gruesome stories of people, experiencing real pain in the church. So I've always been in a position where I've listened to people. And then I worked as a reporter. So I've always heard all of these stories of people. But you know what bothered me the most? When people came to the church, shared their story with somebody, anybody in the church. And when they turned around later on and start talking about church hurt and how they were treated and how somebody responded to them and how somebody answered me, that really, really gives me great pain. Because it took so much grace for them to even show up in that space or your space, wherever you are. And now I'm talking about church universal, you being a part of the body of Christ. It takes so much for somebody to show up in your space and to open their hearts and to share their innermost thoughts with you. That takes a lot. And for you to turn around the minute they walk out of your presence or whatever and betray them and share that with somebody else, shame on you. Shame on the church. And I've had to hear so many stories of people who would say, well, I came and I spoke to so and so, and the next thing I know, somebody was calling me and telling, it was embarrassing and it was shameful and it was hurtful. We have to do a better job of covering each other. We have to do a better job of covering each other. Irma says, Miranda, you took lemon and made lemonade. And not only lemonade, but lemon meringue pie. Great show tonight. Thank you, Irma. Thank you. Oh, hey, Tracy, my cousin. You know what, guys? Okay, sidebar again. I have some of the greatest family around. My family include my siblings, my cousins, my aunties, whatever. Whenever they get an opportunity, they pop in to my show, and I appreciate all of you. So, hey, Tracy, thank you. Thank you for tuning in. So what does Irma say? I mean, Joba says, that's why I make a difference. I three, went to church and I did not get no help but God. Okay. Yeah. So see, the thing about it is when people trust you with their heart, and whether this is in relationships, interpersonal relationships, external relationships, whatever, when people trust you with their heart, they made a conscious decision, like they labored over that. So for me, every time somebody came into the church at whatever point, I understood that that took all of them to even show up, to leave their home and come to sit and share their heart. I understood how meaningful that was, and I guarded that the best I knew how. Um, at the time I was there, because it's not easy. And then let's flip it and say sometimes that people have unrealistic expectations of the church. Can I say that too? Some people have unrealistic expectations, and let me say this, so working in the church, working in ministry and all that kind of stuff, and two different churches at different seasons in my life. Some people think that because I pay my tithe and because I give an offering, any and every time I show up here asking you for some money, I'm supposed to get it. You're supposed to find it. Some people think that. Yeah, I know, because I've heard it over and over and over and over again. And the one thing I do know is that the tithe, for those who believe in tithing, because some don't, some say it's Old Testament, whatever. For those who believe in tithing, the tithe is the debt that you owe. So that's like you paying a bill. For those of you who believe in it, you owe that tenth to give. Your offerings are what you do above whatever that tenth is, and that's on you, whatever you decide to give. But for me to have the audacity to think that just because you paid a tithe or you gave an offering, you supposed to, yeah, something's wrong with that. Now, I'm not letting the institution of the church off the hook either, because there should be benevolence being done. There should be benevolence. There should be giving. But remember, the institution has nothing if the persons who are a part of that particular body don't give. They have nothing. So if you're one of those persons who don't believe in the tithe, and you're one of those persons who just bring $1 every week, well, remember that ministry has, just like you have a home or an apartment and you pay bills, the ministry has to pay bills. And if they have a staff, they have to do that too. That's your tithe, and your offering is the sole conduit or resource that they have, unless that institution has investments elsewhere. But that's all that we have. That's all. That's the only way they raise money. So just thought to throw that out for some reason, because I've been on the inside and have a certain understanding of certain things. But as individuals, wherever you sit, whoever you come in contact with, just do your best. Do your best to reach out to connect with those people in your sphere of influence. Do your best to try to assist. Do your best to try to guide and to bring counsel when requested. Do your best to be confidential. Do your best to cover and surround people. Do your best to love people, like Monique said earlier. Just do your best to love a little more. And the thing about love is when you open yourself, you become more vulnerable. And the truth is that nobody likes to be vulnerable because vulnerability is very uncomfortable. Very uncomfortable. But once you begin to live in that space where people trust you and you open yourselves, because if they're giving, you have to give back in order for it to be what it is, reciprocal rather, on a relationship of mutual exchange. You have to be able to do that, and that calls for vulnerability, and that's why everybody's not good at it, because people don't like you to see their, I wouldn't even say weaknesses, but people don't like you to see their soft spots, or people don't like you to see areas where they were not as victorious in, or feel uncomfortable. People don't like that. And vulnerability is learned. It's a learned behavior because it's not natural. It's not natural for a lot of people. Joba says you have to give tenth, you have to give and more pieces. Some churches receive but don't help in time of needs. Yeah. I mean, that's just an issue that they're going to have to deal with God. But my point is, I'm not sitting in that seat and determining what they do or do not do. I'm just saying you have to be very, very careful in your spirit in terms of your expectations, because that's where people conclude and walk around with church hurt, and they get so bitter with the quote unquote church that some stop going forever and ever, and they just walk around talking about this church hurt. And clearly, if you take that kind of stance, you're not going to make any progress in your own life, because the whole issue of Jesus coming and dying and for our sins was that we could be forgiven and we could forgive others too. It's the truth. At some point in our lives, people are going to disappoint us, and people who we respect and are close to. But the question is, do you continue to walk around for the rest of your life talking about that incident, that one incident, it may be, where this person hurt you in the church, and as a result, you have church hurt, and forever and ever till Jesus come, that's the way you're going to be? Is that the decision you're going to make? Is that what you're really doing? Again, it doesn't let the church off the hook for their inability or their lack of compassion or empathy or whatever the situation may have been. That doesn't let them off the hook. But what's more important is your soul and you. That's what's more important. How you going to handle this when you walk away? Because you already know they did wrong. So you going to walk around talking about church hurt forever? Like, really? Didn't Jesus take care of that on the cross? And I'm not saying that you can't grieve and you can't mourn. And I'm not saying that it shouldn't hurt. But I'm saying, at what point do you let it go? At what point do you let it go? And that's where we wrestle, where it cuts deep. Yeah. That transparency hits different when you're vulnerable. You're absolutely right, Altrice. Yeah. Another thing about vulnerability is you have to be careful who you are vulnerable to. And this is where you need discernment. This is where you need the wisdom of God. This is where you need Holy Spirit to guide you. Because I'm not just saying just open up to anybody, but I'm saying you need that guidance that when you open up to the person, you found a safe space. You found a safe space. You found somebody who will help you and not hurt you. Yeah. He'll help you to heal and not hurt you. So you have to be very careful. You have to be very careful with that too. So yeah, Loretta says you have to forgive. We have to. I mean that's on you if you want to walk around with that hurt for 20 for 2 years, for 2 months, for 2 years, 20 years. That's on you if you want to walk around with that. And every time something happens, you draw a reference to that over. I'm telling you, if you experience some kind of hurt, emotional or spiritual, from the quote unquote church, whether it's the pastor, evangelist, the deacon, the usher, the whoever, if you've experienced that, and every time something comes up, you keep bringing that, your experience about that, you're not over it yet. And if you're not over it yet, you really need to confront that. Confront that issue, confront that demon, whatever you want to call it. You need to confront that and not allow it to have power over you. You shouldn't allow an incident or a person or a group of persons, for that fact, to stop you from pushing forward, from moving ahead. And it's a process for some, because everybody is wired different. I understand that. Some people, they have like, it just rolls off them like water off a duck's back. Some people, they're going to take that pain and rather than meditate on the word day and night, they're going to meditate on that pain day and night. They can overthink. They're going to process that over and over and over again. And I'm saying to you, if that's how you wired, you need to catch that. You need to nip that in the butt. You need to nip that. Because the longer you meditate on it, the stronger footing it's going to take in your life. It's going to hold you strong. And it's going to become that strong man in your life. That every time you hear the mention of church or a pastor, excuse me, or evangelist, you're going to have a negative connotation every time. Lisa Evans, that was me, overthinker. Me too. I overthought everything. I like to say, Lisa, I'm a recovering overthinker. Recovering. I process things. I mutter. I flip it. Then I go back and all that kind of stuff. But no, not when it comes to hurt and pain. What things that I know can hold me hostage, I'd cripple me so that I don't have the ability to move forward and accomplish the things that I need. No. Mm-mm. No. You could get me there in a moment, and after I release that, I'm done. I'm not meditating on that because I see the bigger picture and I understand more. I understand more, and I'm just saying you have to be able to press, to move forward. And you have to be self-aware, because if you don't even know that's an issue, then that repeat behavior is going to continue to happen with you if you don't even know it's an issue. But I'm speaking once you know that is an issue, once you identify that pattern in your life, you need to deal with that. You can't be mad at everybody in the church, universal, because of one experience you had in a church. Then you just write off the entire universe of churches because of one bad experience. You're depriving yourself of an opportunity to learn and grow and flourish. You have to hold yourself accountable for your own actions because you can't control the bad actions of the other people who hurt you. You couldn't control them because if you could, it never would have happened. Good night, Renee. Thanks for tuning in. So you have to think about that seriously. How much more, how much longer, if you are one of those persons, and I don't know why I'm on this topic tonight, but if you are one of those persons who's wrestling, battling this whole church hurt concept or whatever, you have to think about how much longer do I want to hold on to this and make a decision. Put a date on it. As of tonight, as of tomorrow. But you can do that because you can control you. You just can't control other people. Make a decision to move on. Make a decision to move on. But don't write off. That's like writing off the entire white race because one white person did something stupid. Or writing off the entire black race because one black person did something stupid. So you're going to write off the church universal because one church experience, one pastor, evangelist, somebody messed up. So you write off the entire church? Are we really doing that? So hold yourself accountable. Don't wait for anybody to prod you or prep you or anything. You don't have to wait. In your own time, in your own quietness, in your own moment, that's a conversation you could have with God and tell him, listen, I'm tired of this. Take this away from me. I want to go further. I want to do more. I want to experience more, whatever it is. And again, if you're in a company of people that is encouraging you in that vein, you know, those people, if it was me, what I would do, if you're in a company of those kind of people, if I were you, I'd leave them alone. I'd leave them alone. I'd get in the company of people who can help me see a different perspective, who can help me grow, and who can help me walk me, take my hand, and help me navigate my way out of the experience that I've had. Sometimes I tell people it's good if you can't say things, because a lot of times you may not be able to verbally express yourself. And as a writer, I believe in writing, obviously. So that's when I encourage people to either write a letter to yourself, to the person who hurt you, or whatever it is. Write a letter, pour out your heart if you can't say it. And if you don't want to say it to the person, just write a letter, pour out your heart, talk about that hurt, talk about that pain, talk about what you didn't like, talk about the betrayal, whatever it is. Actually, write about it. And when you finish writing about it, destroy it, let it go. Let it go. If you're a person who wants to confront the person, but not confrontation in a negative, wild out loud kind of way. If you're the type of person who would like to sit down and talk about it, then arrange that to happen. Figure out what you want to say and get it done. Arrange to have an appointment with the person or persons and carry someone with you for the record. Remember that? That's what scripture advises. But if you have that opportunity to have that meeting and to talk to them, do that. My thing is let it go when it's done. And here's what I want to where I want to draw the line. You're not doing this for them. Remember, you're doing this for you so that you can move on. So why do I say that? Because whether they respond positively or negatively, that's not your issue. You're there because you needed to express yourself. You're there because you needed to get it off your chest. You're there because you needed them to know how you felt in the moment when whatever happened. You're there to release and move on with no expectations because that's where we set ourselves up. Because again, we cannot control somebody else's reaction or response to what we say or do. So remember why you're there if you're somebody who needs to talk it out. But if not, journal it, write a letter, and then destroy it and let it go. Thelma says, Loretta says, always look for the good in a bad situation. Yeah. Um, but that's not always easy, honestly, in the moment when you feel in that pain. Let's just be frank and out front. That's not always easy when you in that pain because when you in your feelings, as they say, you in your feelings. Yeah. But once you get out of that, you have to start putting things in perspective. Thelma says people will fail you, but always say, remember your why. Yeah, I listen. You have to anything that you do for your growth, for your development, for your emotional stability, mental stability, whatever it is, that's on you. That's on you. That's on you. As you decide, I want to let this thing go. As you decide, I want to let this thing go, do what you need to do. Do what you need to do. And mind you, some people don't need to write it. Some people don't need to confront. Some people literally just make a decision. I'm not going after that. And they're able to leave it. But that's why we have so many different personality types and we respond to different things and we just do things differently. That's why self-awareness is important so that you understand how you're wired. You understand what it's going to take to satisfy you in that particular situation, whether you can just walk away from it, whether you need to talk about it, or whether you need to write about it. Once you figure out which method works for you, go for it. Go for it, but do not wallow in that stuff. And don't allow it to hold you hostage. And that doesn't even just refer to the church. It's also about your relationships with people, your friends and your family and your husband and your wife and whatever. Decide, I'm either going to let this thing go, I'm going to talk about this and handle this, or I'm going to write about it. Because maybe if I write them a letter, what I can't say, I can write. Because sometimes you could give the letter to the person. But I think if you leave with nothing else is, I don't have great expectation of how people should respond to certain things. I just don't. I'm not going to carry that weight. What's important to me is that I release what I need to release. And hopefully, in me releasing it, whether I've spoken it, whether I've written it, that you receive it in the spirit it was given. That's all. That's the only expectation I have. If you don't receive it in the spirit that it's given, I have done my best. And that's where we started. Shake the dust off your feet and keep it moving. But don't allow it rather to hold you hostage. So, don't know why Arsenio didn't show up, but our time together is far spent. Thank you guys for swerving with me tonight. I appreciate you all so very much. Until next week, I hope you have a wonderful week. I hope you're intentional about your week. Oh, please do me a favor and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm trying to build that format because I'm going to be uploading some videos and tips and inspirational stuff. And those of you who may be my friends, check your notification thing. I probably sent you a notification to join our Swerve community on Facebook. So if you haven't seen it already, check it. Check it to see if I sent you an invitation and join our group, because I try to do a lot of tips and training, starting to do it rather, on a regular basis to keep people motivated. Again, I'm committed to helping you live your best life. Let's do this thing together. Let's make God smile in our choices, in the things that we do, in the things that we say. Let's be intentional, like we hear all the time. But let's do this thing, man. For those of us who recognize the importance, Tracy, I think you're in already. I don't know if you accepted and didn't realize it, but I think so. But yeah, so for those of you, check your notifications. If I sent you an invitation, please join. And I hope somebody who's in the group could tell you how valuable it is. But thank you so much. If you're not my friend, send me a friend request so I can get you involved in that group too. But thanks again, guys, for hanging with me, for swerving with me tonight. From Dallas, I'm Miranda. Have a wonderful evening and an even better week. Bye.